on, let me start sharing my screen. So welcome, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this online training on science, technology, innovation, policy and policy instruments for the SDGs organized for the SADC region. This is a program organized in collaboration with the United Nations Interagency Task Team on STI for the SDGs, and in particular for this work stream 6 on capacity building in STI for the SDGs. My name is Fernando Santiago. I am an Industrial Policy Officer at UNIDO, and I will have the privilege and pleasure to moderate this session. Just to give you a background of the Interagency Task Team, it was created in 2017. As you know, the IATT, the Interagency Task Team, is one of the elements to operationalize the technology facilitation mechanism, which was launched in 2015. So, and this is a part of the support for the Agenda 2030, right? The Interagency Task Team, Work Stream 6, was formed in 2017, and as a joint effort by different UN entities, including UNTAD, UNESCO, UNEP, UNUMERIT, WIPO, UNIDO, and also some of the regional commissions, UNESCO, NECA, and ECLAC. And of course, we also have the participation of colleagues from the European Commission, the Joint Research Center, the ERC. And the idea here is really to give some activities that strengthen capacities and interact with networks of STI decision makers on topics related to STI policy for SDGs. And you can have more information on the group and the activities on the screen. You have the link to our website, and you can have more details on activities that have been carried out previously and the one today. Just sort of housekeeping rules, as many of you might be already familiar with the use of Zoom, but just in case, just a reminder, please, we'll ask you to please keep your microphone and your camera off all the time when you want to speak or we're given the floor. We will ask you kindly ask you to unmute your mic and open your camera. But for the time being, when you are not speaking or intervening, please keep it closed so that we can all have some more quality for the transmission, right? You are welcome to ask for the floor. There would be presentations and some time for you to ask questions. You can use the functions for raise your hand, or please feel free to post your questions in the chat. We will be monitoring those questions and comments. And of course, for those of you who would like to have a translation in French or Portuguese, please go select the channel, the appropriate channel that you can see on your screen, so you can access the presentation in either French or Portuguese, in addition to the one in English. So we have five sessions, starting from the one today, one every day for about 2 hours, covering from this policy design of instruments using the SDGs to issues around policy instruments, entrepreneurship, innovation, some of the issues around implementation of STI policy instruments, and then of course monitoring and evaluation. We will have those 5 sessions during this week, delivered by different colleagues from the entities that I mentioned previously. For today, the session today, we have, this is the program, in addition to this welcoming remarks, introductory remarks, we have then a presentation by UNESCO on approaches to STI policy for SDGs, followed by a presentation on science for supported decision making. The idea here is that science, technology, innovation, we tend to cluster together, but they all have their own dynamics. So we will have some discussion around why it's important to be conscious of the differences also in the different components. We expect to have an open discussion around those presentations. In general, we try to make these sessions interactive, so please bear with us. We'll have some content examples on STI policies or SDGs, again, followed by discussion. At the end, we will have some summary questions. And in the process, we will have also some opportunities to interact with you through something that we call Mentimeter. It's a tool that we use to post some questions and you can give us an answer. I will talk about a bit more about it later on. But just to give you a sense of who is with us today, apart from myself, which I've already introduced myself, we have also Mr. Guillermo Añó. I'm going to present them in the order that we will appear in your cameras and your screens. Guillermo Añó is a senior specialist of the Science and Technology Policy and Capacity Building Program at the UNESCO Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. He's based in Montevideo, Uruguay. From there, he manages UNESCO regional activities and STI policies, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, scientific communication, gender and STEM, and then information in STI, promotion of basic sciences and engineering, science politics, society links, and science diplomacy. We also have Mr. Pierre Boileau, who is the head of the Global Environment Outlook Program at UN Environment. In this role, he has led his team to complete the 6th Global Environment Outlook, which was published in March 2019, as well as 6 regional environmental assessments published in May 2016. Prior to these activities, Pierre was the head of the International Energy Agency's non-member country energy statistics section, where he led a team of statisticians that produced the International Energy Agency's Global Energy Data publication, as well as various electronic data products. We also have with us today Mr. Clovis Freire. Clovis is an economist working at the Division on Technology and Logistics of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNTAD. He coordinated and was the lead author of the Technology and Innovation Report 2021, which many of you might have seen the presentations, focusing on how developing countries can catch the new wave of technological change to drive structural transformation and sustainable development while minimizing the risk of increasing inequalities. Also with us, Ms. Cornelia Sinova. Cornelia is a program specialist in science policy and capacity building at UNESCO in Paris, at the headquarters in Paris, where she manages STI policy projects at national and regional level, as well as some capacity building activities for the development, review, and implementation of policies. She's an active member of the UN Interagency Task Team on STI roadmaps and coordinator of the work stream on capacity building. Those will be colleagues presenting today, but also we have in the background our colleagues from UNESCO, Segnei Wang and Spina, who will be helping us with the chat and of course with the Mentimeter, which I'm gonna explain quickly. And I think I would also invite you to start addressing the question, right? So during this session, the way we also build some interaction with you is through these quizzes in Mentimeter. The questions will be posted on your chat. So please, you can take a look at your chat. There should be a link where you can go and you find a question. And I think this is just to warm up, because we will be using this throughout the different sessions, not only today, but also in the 5 days. So we would like to start also, for you to get familiar with the tool, but also to help us get to know you a bit better. So where are you? There are 16 countries, and so we would like to see how many of you are coming from different countries, and also, that help us, as I said, put some dynamic to the presentations. Segnei and Spina, please, if you can post the first question, I will. I think I have to stop sharing my screen, right? You should be able to see on your chat. The Spina has just posted the first question, and as you enter, so you would like to say where are you coming from, which your country, where your institution is located. As you input the answer, we will be able to see on the screen where are you coming from. So please look for the question on the chat. I can see, the question is there. If you have any issues, please post the question on the chat. But you should be able to see the question on the chat. Please click on the link and just click, provide the answer. Where is the country where you're coming from? Where is the country where your institution is located? I see. Somebody coming from Canada. whenever you enter the number of your country, you will start seeing it popping up on the screen, and we will be able to see where are you, everywhere you're coming from. Right? So this is just a sort of a training exercise. We will use the tool in the different sessions. So it's just for you to get acquainted with the working of the tool. So I don't see how many of you are there. I see 52 people. So we only have one. Don't put the answer on the chat. I see somebody from Senegal. Please follow the link to the Mentimeter question and just input the question there, the answer there. And then we should be able to see where you're coming from on the screen. Don't be shy. I see you are a bit shy today. I see about 52 participants.
Fernando, there is a problem with the link in the chat.
Is it a problem?
It guides you to another Menti question, not for the first one. I think.
Spina, can you check the question, please? Yeah, there's a new link there. Please, this should work. Thank you for noting that. Yeah, okay, so now the link is there. You should be able to see the link. So please click on it and let us know where are you based. We already see somebody from Canada, but we know you're coming from other places. It's still not working, or I see no answers coming up. It's just a test. It's just for you to get used to the thing, but because we will be using this tool during the rest of
is the right link.
Yeah, this should be the right link. Please go again to the chat and look for the link, and then you should be able to see the question there, and then we will we'll see your answers on the screen. Okay, now it's coming. Okay, now you see how the word cloud is populating. So we have people from Botswana, Zambia, Mauritius, Senegal, France. So please, just one more minute. We have 16 answers so far, and we have more than 50 participants. So please give us your answer, and we will just see. But this is really what the dynamics is. Why, of course, this is the idea of the Mentimeter. So we will provide a question for you to react, and that will provide us some substance also to motivate the discussion. The idea is to make sure that this is an interactive webinar. It's not just about us presenting the material, but also for you to interact with us and hopefully to share some experiences. Okay, maybe we can move on because I'm in the interest of time. If you can then pose the next question, Despina, which is now, because this session is about the SDGs and how to inform policy making through the SDGs. Please let us know what are the top 3 SDG priorities of your government. You should be able to see the link for question 2 on the chat. So please go to the chat and then just input your answer, and we should be able to see the answers coming up on the screen. Not the question, not the country. It's more about the 3 SDGs that are priorities for you. Can you check the link? Maybe Spina, is this the right one? Yeah. Okay. Now it's coming. Yeah.
Yes, it's the right one, Fernando.
Okay.
I take it.
Okay, so it's not about your country this time. This time it's about the SDGs, 3 SDGs that are the high priority for your countries, right? We see health definitely coming up, water, clean water, which is related to health and that, and poverty and hunger, infrastructure, which is related to SDG 9. Please share the answer with us. We have 7 people providing inputs, but there are much more than 7 in the webinar. This is also important because we will refer back to this question later on when we are presenting. SDG 2, which is on zero hunger, right? Health is definitely coming up strongly. Infrastructure. So it's those the 3 SDGs that are the highest priority for your government, right? Health definitely is there quite clearly, quite strong. Education comes a bit next. We can see some issues around SDG 9. Maybe just a few more seconds and then we move on because we need to have to follow the program. Maybe while you are presenting your questions, your answers, I would invite, is Ms. Annelien Morgan there? If you would like to give us some comments, let me just stop, ask Segmate to please stop sharing. And if you don't mind, Annelien, maybe can we pass the floor quickly to you to give us some introductory remarks. We would really appreciate the collaboration with SADC in this opportunity to share with you the trainings that we provide. This is something that we've been trying to get together for a long time, and we're happy to have the opportunity to make this happen. But maybe also would like to hear from you, SADC. Annelien, I don't know if you would like to address the participants on behalf of SADC as a sort of part of the collaboration with us. Thank you. Annelien.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for the floor. And afternoon, colleagues. Afternoon to all the participants and all the partners who have connected, especially the member states who have connected, who've been with us throughout this journey since we started this training in September of this year. We are now on module 7. We call this module 7, even though we've opened it up as an open workshop for all stakeholders to participate in, especially from the SADC region and also other parts of the world. I'd like to thank UNESCO, the regional office whom we've been collaborating with in putting together this program. I'm not sure if Marshall is here or Muche to also say a few words, but our collaboration is with the regional office. But also to say thank you to the interagency task force for their cooperation, for coming on board when we proposed this, that they become part of this training framework that we developed. So we look forward to this week's engagements through this workshop and the esteemed presenters that have been put together. We had some planning meetings last week with Dimo and Cornelia in planning for the session this week. I'd also like to thank all the partners who are part of the interagency team. I will not mention you my name, but we know who the partners is. I think Fernando has put on the slide to give some background. I'd also like to thank our other partner, SPRU, through TIPSI. I see Chucks is also connected. We are also collaborating with TIPSI through Sussex University, who will be delivering the final module next year, which is module 8. So it's quite an enriched program, but our main partner being the Tshwane University of Technology, based in South Africa, Pretoria, who's the main coordinating partner and delivery partner for the entire program. So through Professor Mario, I'm not sure if Professor Mario is connected, but also to thank Professor Mario and the team who have ably put together this training program. And then also the financial resources we received from UNESCO, but also the financial resources that SADC Secretariat has also put in throughout for this program to take place. I thank you, Fernando. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you very much for those introductory remarks. Yeah, well, we are also very happy for the opportunity to partner with SADC in this training. And well, just without further ado, it's time. Maybe Guillermo, if you can start your presentation, just sharing your screen. Guillermo, as I said, he's with us from Uruguay. He's at the regional office in Montevideo. So Guillermo, please, the floor is yours. I have about 15 minutes. I'm a bit behind, but.
Well, Thank you very much, Fernando. Good afternoon for everyone. I beg my pardon for the translator because I'm going to run a little bit. And then I'm going to try to split my presentation in two parts. The first one is trying to understand how we build up this 2030 agenda, and the second one, how we start thinking to design policy for that in terms of science, technology, and innovation. So here we can, let me go to do some history a little bit. We can see from the Industrial Revolution that we face as humanity different waves of technology, each of one improve the technology and gain in complexity. So that means that we have to invest more in knowledge and to think more and more in a scientific way of improve these technologies. At the beginning, science was not the main issue related to these technical revolutions, and then knowledge was gaining in complexity. And at the same time, something that I want to add in this evolutionary scheme is that each technology was shortened distances and help it increase time. We are in a perfect example now that distance is not anymore a issue. We are all around the world. I'm in South America talking with you in South Africa with partners in Europe at the same time, in the same moment, sharing only a screen. So the technology allowed us to have our world in one hand in our phones, for instance. That means, on the other hand, that global challenges becomes, the challenges for population and for our countries become globally. So that means that, for instance, I am going to try to gather the global challenge for the future in three main avenues. One is energy. We are facing to change our metrics of energy. On the other hand, we are facing climate change. That going to implies a lot of challenges. And on the other hand, we are facing demographic explosion. That also means a change of the way of life, because this demographic explosion is not in the same conditions we used to have. It means we are going to have bigger cities, and we are talking about not anymore in rural poverty citizens. We are talking about lower middle class citizen in cities. So it's a change of way of life. And in some sense, that is the issue that the 2030 agenda gathered. This agenda was thought to target the development of the persons, the people, in the sustainability of the planet, because we all we share the same planet, in a framework of prosperity. It's not any sense to talk about to remain the sustainability of planet in terms of not having or facing some prosperity in our future. So we have to deal with these three issues. We have to think on development for people in one planet, but in the framework of prosperity. And to do that, we must do it in a framework of peace, that the 4P of this agenda. And that implies that we have to make good and a lot of partnerships. So these 70 sustainable development goals and their targets are trying to englobe this idea of these global challenges that we are facing. We have to do it in terms of partnership and peace. And this is not only a governmental issue. It must involve all the population, the government, the private sector, civil society. We all have to work to target these goals. On the other hand, and this slide tries to show you that there exists a lot of interrelationships between the goals, And not necessarily these relations between goals are easy. In many sense, they face trade-off, and that means that if you can get one of those goals, but probably that means that you are not doing well in other one. For instance, you can tackle hunger, but that means that you are fighting. You are exploiting the fauna of the sea, and that means that you are not making it sustainable. So how we can do, or how we can deal with this big challenge? Well, we need more science, technology, and innovation for that. And what means this? What means that we need more science, technology, innovation? Because we don't have any of these targets that are exclusively for science, technology, innovation. We have to include, we have to use science, technology, innovation to build new knowledge, to target those all targets. So doing that, and this systemic approach needs to build a robust science and technology innovation system. That means to first know and describe how is our national STI systems or regional STI systems. That means and requires to identify different actors and institutions. Every system implies a variety of institutions and actors that at the same time has different linkages and interactions. So we have to describe that and to know what they are interacting and linkages. So that means that we have to work in a legal, reveal a good framework for this system. That means that we have to work in the exchange and flows of knowledge. We have to facilitate that. And for all of that, we need a set of policies. We need to look for a variety of policies, not only STI policies. We need to see other kind of policies, financial policies, legal of trade policies, intellectual property policies. So we need to see a wide screen of policies. But now we are going to focus on STI policies. And the first thing that I want to highlight is that science, technology, and innovation are they integrate the same family, but they are not the same individuals. So that means you need science policy, you need technology policy, and you need innovation policy, and you need to be the three of them be well interrelated. You need to coordinate them to function well, but you need to know that they are different policies because they target different kind of agents or actors. For instance, science is focused on scientific community and it focuses on building up scientific knowledge. That is not the same when we are talking about technology. Technology implies that you already have, or you are going to build up a new technology, or you are going to adopt a technology. So you are dealing this with different type of target. You are talking about a technology to try to share and spread around the population, that it's different from innovation, that where your main target is going to focus on the behavior of agents in order to have them taking good decisions in terms of new innovations related with the goal you set up in policy. The academy is thinking on that. It's not thinking anymore only in terms of science, technology, innovation systems. They are thinking more and more on how to bring down to earth that ideas, that theory. So we are now seeing different kind of approaches in that sense. We can talk about the mission approach, the transformation approach, the inclusion approach, or holistic approach. Each of them has pointing out different issues that are very, very important in order to think on policies. But if you remain only in one of them, you are going to face also some limitations. So it's important to learn about these approaches, but to focus on how to design policy. And that brings us to this chart. It's a very, very common chart of how to think public policy. In this chart, we are trying to put it related to the idea of public science, technology, innovation, public policy. First of all, if you want to design public policy, you need to define the problem you are going to target. And to do that, that means to setting the agenda where you are going to orientate your STI policies. So you have to involve different actors and institutions to determine what problems you are going to target. Setting that, then you have to try to start thinking in different possibly policy formulations. You can identify different set of policy you are going to implement. The idea is that you have to try to bring up some coherence between these different policies. And then you have to see the possibilities of your institutionality and your idiocracy. So you have to decide what road you are going to go by. And then that is the part you start making decisions. Government are going to adopt it for one reason, one of these possibilities. And then when you choose this road, you have to start implementing instruments that are related with these policies. Another time, they have to be coherent, this instrument, with the decision of the policy you are going to implement. From there, in some month or a year, you have to make an evaluation of those policies in order to see if they are targeting the problems that you already set up time before, or if they are having some effects that this target changes. So you have to start again this cycle in order to rethink where problems are you going to target, and then you have to redefine policies and so on. So this cycle of policy implies, in terms of STI policy, a lot of different issues that you have to include, you have to take care of. Then you have to think that you have many different goals. You have to you have to impair your STI policy with your national development plans. You have to set up monitoring and evaluation process in order to correct these policies. You have to take care of gender and youth issues, because we are talking about future. You have to set up what are going to be your priorities in different sectors. You have to set up a new legal framework and governance framework that go by with these new policies or the plan you set up. You have to build up different capacities to accompany these policies. You have to think on your structured organizations. You have to set up new institutions. For that, you have to design policy instruments and thinking who are going to fund these policies. And probably, and we are going to see now, if we are going to relate STI policies with SDG, you need to think globally. You need to think in that sense in international and regional cooperation for develop this science. The challenge that we are facing implies and needs global cooperation. I only think that maybe 2 countries around the world could do it alone. All the other countries need cooperation and need help to target these goals.
So, 1 more minute.
Okay, I'm going to end.
1 minute.
Thank you. In terms of SDGs, you need to focus on these things. Specifically, you need to think in international cooperation. You need to foster multi-stakeholder partnership for this to invest. And you need to think on transition to open science, because you need to do it globally, as pandemic show us. You need to share information. You need to try to set up channels to help each other around the world to fix these challenges. So for that, you need also science diplomacy, and you need to focus these relationships. For instance, you need to also focus on exchange with indigenous knowledge. That is another source of knowledge that could bring a lot of good insights, for instance, in terms of environment for science development. Here you have a book that helps you to think and to set up this policy. This IATT task team reflect their this. And here I'm going to only show you how different questions and thoughts you are going to face if you start thinking to decide STI policies for SDGs. You are going to face this trade-off. So that's the challenge. That's question here are some examples of the challenges you have to think in order to design good STI policies in terms of the framework of the SDGs. Many thanks. It's all. I stop here.
Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you very much, and also for keeping the time. We'll ask Pierre to go for the second presentation. Just for the participants, please feel free to post questions. I mean, we have already had the first presentation by Guillermo. There will be a next presentation by Pierre, but at the end we'll have some time for discussion. So please post your questions, and if you would like to take the floor, just use the functionality in Zoom. Pierre, you also have 15 minutes. I mean, you have to go back. Yeah, so please, Pierre, the floor is yours. 15 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Fernando, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the organizers for organizing this training. My goal really is to just speak a little bit about creating science for decision-making. An awful lot of the policies that will be developed will require some form of evidence behind them to be able to make sure that they are meeting the mark. And there we go. So in the environmental context, at least, we at UNEP use science quite a lot. We develop a lot of science to be able to inform environmental decision makers. And this is primarily because a number of the environmental agreements, the multilateral environmental agreements like the Paris Agreement or the biodiversity IATT targets, they all require some understanding of the environmental interaction that we have with the world. So these are complex systemic problems. They have planetary impacts. There are also economic and social impacts of these environmental measures. And so we have to understand how working on a particular environmental issue will affect the economy and society at large. These are problems generally of collective action, either overuse of resources, or there's pollution created by a larger population or specific activity like transportation. And so we require governments and countries to work together to be able to resolve these issues. Now, science doesn't always give you all of the answers, but it does often give you the what is the problem and by when does the problem need to be sorted out. I'll just show you this graph, which actually we've developed from the findings of the Global Environment Outlook and the IPCC recent assessments on the amount of fossil fuels that we would have to remove from the energy mix by 2050 for us to be able to meet a 1.5 degree world. So we've done the analysis of the amount of energy demand increase between now and 2050, and energy demand should probably increase by about 40% between now and 2050. Unfortunately, we have to, at the same time as the energy demand is increasing, we have to reduce the amount of fossil fuel in the energy mix by about 80% to reach a 1.5 degree world. So the analysis in the scientific assessments provides you the what needs to be done and by when. Then the policy analysis that accompanies this, these scientific assessments generally allows you to figure out how you can achieve these goals. For example, in the energy sector, you can promote renewable energy, you can promote electrification of vehicles, and you also need, at the same time as you're implementing these policies, to interact with the different affected groups. Their jobs might be affected, their livelihoods might be affected. You should also try and create partnerships to ensure that different actors are not disadvantaged, and interaction with multiple stakeholders and different actors usually deepens the commitment of these groups to be able to implement these policies. So in the case of the energy demand, we've actually identified that reducing energy demand is an important element. So bringing in more energy efficiency, and then integrating more intensive decarbonization strategies will help achieve the 80% reduction target. While we are doing science for policy making, we have to consider three main criteria: the relevance of the analysis that we're doing, the legitimacy of the analysis, whether it's considered legitimate by governments, and the scientific credibility. Many policymakers and scientists tend to speak a different language, so we have to be able to communicate science in a way that will be understandable by policymakers. Policymakers and scientists have different needs when producing science for decision making. Policymakers need the science to be directly applied to the policy problem, so it has to be relevant and salient, or relevant and directly targeted towards the policy problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, all right. Sorry, it said I was muted there for a second. The policies need to encourage collective action. The science must be viewed as legitimate by the governments, otherwise they won't act on it. And the scientists must be seen to be producing this science through a credible process of peer reviews, using published literature and others. So this is a very important step in the process. And of course, as you undertake this scientific assessment process, it really is a social process. And different types of scientists tend to work in different ways. Empirical scientists work in different ways than social scientists. They have different interpretations of different scientific results. You have to reconcile different scientific views in the published literature. So this is why we call the scientific work that we do at UNEP an assessment. We are actually assessing existing literature. We're not conducting original research. We're basically saying what have existing scientists already figured out. This hopefully will create a compelling narrative. Rather than writing it in sort of typical scientific language, we are trying to create a document in a language that will be understandable by non-scientists, by policymakers. And we often do that by creating specific visuals, graphics, maps, and multimedia to be able to encourage decision makers to absorb the information in a way that maybe they are more familiar with. So that's the process of creating science for decision making. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you also for, was very nice within the time. We have plenty of time for discussion. I know these presentations tend to be rather quick, and we provide a very, general overview with the intention also to have some conversation with you. We don't face some of the challenges that you face in your country. So if any of you has any question, or if any of you would like to share some of your experiences around producing STI policies that take into account the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals, and would like to share with the others, please let us know. I don't see so far questions or comments, but please feel free. Our colleagues Despina and Segmei are monitoring the chat, and myself. If there is any question, we have plenty of time. We have around 20 minutes for discussion only for this block. If there is any comment that you would like to share with us, please. Or if any of the colleagues from the interagency task team would like to add something extra, apart from the comments that we already had. I think one of the important dimensions that we like to stress is this idea of SDGs create this environment in which policymaking needs to be aware of the tensions, right? Trying to solve one problem means perhaps opening other challenges, and so we have to be careful that, you know, in this case, governments may be limited, not only have limited resources in terms of budgets, but also limited resources in terms of knowledge or ability to tackle some issues. So the importance, that's something we stress, is this idea of multi-stakeholders. So there is multiple agents with multiple assets that can be shared. Yes, Annelien, yes, the booklet, the guidebook, actually, the Interagency Task Team, the guidebook, it is also one of those products that's created by the Interagency Task Team. This one is by the STI roadmaps. The guidebook is online, it's available online. And I would like to, maybe one of my colleagues may, if you can share the link to the website. It's downloadable, you can download it for free, and it's now available in many different languages, French, Arabic, apart from English, right? So it's also an idea of creating some guidelines, some minimum basis for countries who are interested in you know, taking on board some of the challenges that, you know, devising these kind of strategies, having SDGs as guidance. The Review Committee would like to raise the question to the floor. Please, you can open your mic.
Yeah, essentially what I'm asking is how does the agencies or those that are representing deal with issues, what I call social media science, but is science that is not based on fact or evidence, but is widely believed. How can you address that? Because it's becoming a problem nowadays. It's a serious issue now. In the context of the pandemics, it's a large percentage of the population that believes what is being discussed in social media and not what evidence-based science is saying. So how do you address this issue, this increasing influence of social media science as opposed to evidence-based or science? Maybe one of the presenters can answer, both of them.
Yeah, I see. Maybe let me just take another comment or question. Mr. or Mrs. Mucha, sorry, I don't know the person, but Ms. Mucha, can you unmute yourself and also open your camera and let us know your comment or question, please, Mr. or Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you. It's Miss.
Oh, Miss. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. So there was a presentation earlier on where the presenter took us through the development of an STI policy. And I think he highlighted the fact that when you're developing a policy, you also need to set up the legal framework. I'm not sure if I heard him correctly, but I was just thinking, do you need, I thought maybe you need to, the STI need to be developed within the existing a legal framework, or is it the other way around? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mucha. I guess, Guillermo, Pierre, those are very relevant questions for you. Maybe you, Guillermo, in terms of,
Yes, I can start with the last one. My answer is both. You need to see what framework, legal framework you have. You know, that's your conditions in some sense. It's not only, I'm not saying that the solution is to change the constitution, for instance. You have to deal with the element you have. In that sense, legal framework is an issue, but maybe in some sense, when you make a good diagnosis of the situation, you could start thinking that you have to change some parts of this legal framework. But you don't have to do it if you don't have a good, well-defined diagnosis of where you want to go. That's the idea. But you have to, in terms of policy, you need to include the legal framework you are working with. And you have to also assess if you can change it or you have to take it on board. The idea is that when you think on public policy, you need to include the legal framework in this discussion, in both sense, in order of conditioner and in order of something that you want to change. And quickly to the Ludo question that it's a big issue, I have two questions. In the long term, I'm thinking on you have to educate the population. You have to make more and more education in terms of science in order to bring the population tools to deal with these misleading guidelines in terms of no based on fact or evidence. I'm not saying science, I am going to say affirmations that could be science. On the other hand, and also in mid-term or long-term, I think that open science it could be a good instrument for that. You need to build up better science communication channels. You now have many different examples around the world with the pandemic. It's not only a paper, the scientific paper, the way you have in different networks, different examples of how to communicate science in good sense. You also need to open the science to the people know that there is not something, it's not magic, that there are people like them thinking and doing things. You also have to enlighten decision makers with knowledge in order to take good decisions and how they could base these decisions and so on. And I leave it here.
Thank you, Guillermo. Pierre, would you like to say something? There's another question, but maybe you want to react to this first two.
Yes, thank you, Fernando. I'll react to the first question, which is actually something that we deal with quite a bit within the production of the science that we use for decision-making on the environment. Our challenge really is to work on this legitimacy component. The legitimacy of the science not only now needs to convince the policymakers, it needs to convince the general public who influence the politicians. And so we are actually targeting or creating more targeted publications that try and explain the science to certain audiences. For example, we have a global environment outlook now for business, global environment outlook now for cities and youth. And these publications are meant to try and explain the science using language and an approach that is familiar to that particular audience. We usually try and create advisory committees before we start these types of projects, advisory committees of NGOs or intergovernmental organizations that work with these audiences. And so the advisory committees provide us with the type of information and the language and the context that these particular groups are used to receiving the information in. And that's how we produce those publications. Beyond that, UNEP and many UN organizations do a lot of advocacy through social media, through different types of venues to try and counter disinformation that might be out there. We don't specifically do that because our main goal is to try and produce the evidence, but other parts of UNEP and other organizations do a fair bit of this work, this advocacy work to try and counter disinformation. And we try and make sure that our science is explained in as legitimate and clear way as possible to try and make sure that we are respected and authoritative source of that information.
Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, I think the question that you raised, Ludovico, has to do a lot with the idea of peer review, right? How to validate knowledge and also to what extent scientists themselves have a responsibility in validating or communicating their findings, right? So these media are creating some new channels that we didn't consider before as important, but in terms of the pandemic, people would like to have access to information. Of course, this idea of expert review has some different views. Just to add, I know there is Mr. Baraditzo, Mr. or Ms. Baraditzo, you like to add, but just I think the IASA and the International Science Council conducted a consultation, I think last year, really what it means for science systems, this idea of the pandemic. And some of those questions that you raised were addressed there in terms of peer review, in terms of funding to react quickly to some of the challenges. And maybe we'll see some of the presentations coming up in the rest of the week. But I think these are very relevant questions in terms of how knowledge is created, how knowledge is validated, and how knowledge is being used for decision-making at times of emergencies like the pandemic, right? Mr. or Mrs. Baraditzo, please, can you take the floor?
Hello, good afternoon. I actually don't have a question. I just noticed that those that are recording is going to the cloud. So can they please restart the recordings, some of them, and then make sure that they select record on this computer so that we can have the recordings in different languages. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's any other comment or question, please. I mean, I already see Monica. Thank you. Thank you, Monica, our colleague from the Joint Research Center, sharing the links to the guidebook, the STI Roadmaps guidebook in French, Portuguese, and then, of course, in other languages for English. There's a question here in the chat. In French, Mr. Ngom, would you like to address directly to the floor? I can read it, but I think please feel free to state it in French. There is translation. So, Mr. Ngom, if you would like to address a question, otherwise I'll read it out. But please feel free to address the floor.
Bonjour. Bon, en réalité, c'est pas une question, mais juste une contribution par rapport au rôle de la science pour le développement. Donc, c'était juste pour partager le fait que la science depuis 2002 a été prise comme un point de consensus pour le développement avec les différents chefs d'État lors du forum de 2002 à Johannesburg. Et il a été retenu que la science doit être un instrument de développement et non une récompense de celui-ci. Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour votre commentaire. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. So if there's anybody else who would like to, I mean, as you see, the idea here is to have some fair amount of time for you to interact not only with the speakers, but also among yourself and sharing these ideas. I think it's important what Mr. Ngom just mentioned, this idea that in a way, we do this because the international community has agreed that science, technology, innovation needs to be considered or sort of leveraged as a sort of an area that is strategic for the achievement of the development goals, which in a way means national targets, right? Recognition that science, technology, innovation have an important role to play in achieving national development targets. And we know many of you are in that area and could find these ideas familiar, but the challenge here is how to go beyond those who are, say, the converted, right? Anybody else would like to share some comments? Any ideas?
Fernando, Fernando, it's Pierre again.
Yes.
Maybe I can just add a little bit of clarification. Your point about peer reviews and making sure that the science is well reviewed and authenticated by the community is an important one. I think it's also important that the recipients of the science also review the information. So we have built into our processes intergovernmental reviews to make sure that the governments are able to review the science and also provide their guidance. Of course, the authors of the science are the ultimate arbiters or the ultimate decision makers as to what the science says. And we often struggle with the challenge that the scientific method itself is meant to try and find better truths. It's meant to question itself constantly. And so scientists who are writing in a document will often highlight uncertainties or different opinions that appear in the science to be able to indicate that they have reviewed those and that they have built upon the best information that they have and the the consensus amongst the scientific community. And the challenge we have with that is that sometimes those scientific uncertainties are exploited as to create doubt in the science itself. But in fact, it's a built-in safety mechanism for the scientific community to have this scientific method that does question itself regularly to be able to see if it's actually coming up with the best science possible. So we have this challenge that the scientific community has these built-in uncertainties and does recognize them because that's part of the scientific method.
Thank you, Pierre, for elaborating further on the topic. Indeed, I think that's why also at the beginning we stressed this idea that our interest in these webinars is to call attention again. You know, over time we have moved from a world of science as the trigger of all the development and knowledge creation. Eventually, we introduce technology. I'm sure that you have already reviewed some of those processes in science and technology, and then we started talking about innovation. Eventually, we started talking about the STI as sort of a single category, and as we see, these are areas with different communities, different entities, different dynamics. So we should be able to consider those, right? So it's important to consider when we're doing this policy. Annelien, please take the floor.
Thank you, Fernando. My question and comment goes to the first presenter, Guillermo. He mentioned the categories of policy, which is science policy as a standalone, technology policy and innovation policy as three separate policy streams. But the practice across many countries, they have all these in one policy where they call science, technology, and innovation policy, which is a national policy, government policy. Others call research and technology policy. Others call it science and technology policy. So if I can just get some input on that, how do you then manage this if these are put all into one policy framework? Thank you.
Guillermo, are you still there? Or maybe Nelly or somebody would like to talk? I don't know if you're still there.
Yes, Fernando. I think Guillermo had to leave for another meeting. He just left, actually. Yes.
Okay. Any colleagues who like to address? Pierre would like to address maybe the question on behalf of you, or maybe Nelly.
Perhaps, sorry, Fernando, Clovis. Yeah. Perhaps I can jump in on that one. I think it's a very good question, Eileen. And that is a big challenge on policy formulation on STI policy, science, technology, innovation, because also depends on who is the main, let's say, minister behind the policy. Is in the case is a minister of science, technology, innovation, or is a minister of higher education and science, technology, innovation, or a minister of technology, innovation. So sometimes the focus is very much on the science part, and you don't see the balance with the technology and innovation policy streams also well developed in the policy. Sometimes that is usually the case. We see a lot of focus on the science, but not this well-balanced part. And in some countries, there are divisions on where the science part is dealt by the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, and the part on technology innovation by the Ministry of Technology Innovation. Sometimes the Ministry of ICT deals with a lot of the digital technology part. So that's the challenge on this policy formulation. And also what Guillermo was mentioning, the science, technology, innovation policy in policy instruments are also beyond the realm of the Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovation. There are policies from other ministries, economy, trade, industry, education, that impact directly on the ecosystem, the National Innovation System, Science, Technology, Innovation. And these are under the purview of other ministries. So that's the big challenge in terms of the Science, Technology, Innovation policy. And that's why we need this multi-stakeholder partnership to go through this process.
Okay, thank you, Clovis. And since you are on the screen, can you please take the floor? I mean, we can now move on to the next block of presentations. Now we go for some country examples. And please, I will ask you, but then please, again, as you see, to the participants, as you see, the idea is that we have the presentations, but also we have some time, fair amount of time for you to ask questions, to make comments. So Clovis, the floor is yours, and I would invite the participants to please continue with the dynamic, post your questions, post your comments on the chat. Thanks, right. Clovis, please.
Okay, great. So let me start saying that what I will try to do with this presentation is actually is a country example. The goal of this presentation is to illustrate two elements that have been highlighted so far in the discussion for an effective STI policy for the SDGs. The first one is the need to direct policy towards national priorities and the SDGs, is this directionality of the policy. The second one is the need for broad participation in the whole policy cycle, as Guilherme was mentioned, not only the policy design, but also in the policy implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and so on later on. So this presentation, we also highlight some of the challenges in this process. I was starting to mention them on my previous comment. So the case is a case study of the Science, Technology, Innovation Policy in Ethiopia. UNCTAD conducted a Science, Technology, Innovation Policy review in that country in 2019. And this example that I will highlight is based on that experience. So just to give a bit of context, you know that there's a lot of things going on in Ethiopia at this moment, but by 2019, where this, let's say, case study is settled, Ethiopia was one of the fast growing economies in Africa and globally, and they were growing very fast since 2003. So there was a lot of foreign direct investment, improvements in the access to education up to the university level, and great improvements in road construction, railway network, and energy. But despite the economic growth, the progress in structural transformation had been very limited. And this is also common to many countries in Africa. So as many countries in Africa, Ethiopia is still essentially a rural economy. Over 70% of the population lives out of farming and other rural activities. And there was a sectoral shift in terms of value added in the economy, but that was largely from agriculture to low value added services and construction, bypassing altogether manufacturing. So again, is a problem or a situation that many developing countries face. So let's first now talk about this idea of directionality. In Ethiopia, their national development plan is considered as a development strategy to implement the SDGs in the country. So each of its priority areas is aligned with the implementation of several SDGs. This highlights the interconnection of these goals, as is what we see in this slide. And this is also common to other countries. To many developing countries, they have been going through this exercise to map their national priorities to the SDGs, and then identify where are the SDGs that are their priorities. Exactly the first question that we used, or the second question that we had in the meeting when we started this session today. So each of its priority areas is aligned with an implementation of several SDGs. But if we look at this set of goals, we see that there are common focus on SDG 8, this is jobs and economic growth, SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. But the STI policy was formulated before this policy direction. And before the SDGs, it was from 2012, the SDGs from 2015. So the focus on the STI policy, it was on technology transfer. So the focus was on a process, was not on the objective. It was not on the desirable outcome. Remember from the presentation of Pierre, he was saying that science identify what and by when, and the policy, the how. And you have to have a direction to know what to reach, right? How to reach, but you have to have a direction. On their policy, their goal is all, it was only the process, is technology transfer. So this is also a common issue in many countries where their science, technology, innovation policies, they focus on increasing technology transfer or promoting science in certain areas, but not focus exactly on the direction of an outcome. What is the goal, the SDGs? Nevertheless, what we saw in Ethiopia and also happens in many countries is that the government implement STI policy instruments, right, which are the actual tools. And these tools, sometimes they incorporate this directionality. For example, one of these tools is the industrial parks. That's one tool that Ethiopia has used. So they have target SDG 8 in these industrial parks because they had at that time 5 industrial parks that were built by the government and that have created 45,000 jobs. So SDG 8 jobs. SDG 9, they have these industrial parks, they have been set up to attract foreign direct investment and upgrade industries and generate exports. One of the best known examples of these industrial parks there in Ethiopia is this in the city of Hawassa. They have this industrial park there. So many well-known global corporations have set up there, particularly in the global value chain of garments and textiles. And in terms of the SDG 12, the one example is this sustainable infrastructure. This industrial park there in Hawassa, it was built with a zero liquid discharge plant. So with capacity to recycle all the water that they use and so on. So very clean. So sometimes even when the policy doesn't have that directionality, in the policy instruments, you can see that. But ideally, the policy gives the direction and the policy instruments, the tools, they will implement that. Tomorrow we'll be discussing policy instruments. Now, related to let me shift to the importance of the multi-stakeholder participation in science, technology, innovation. First, when we conduct that science, technology, innovation policy review in Ethiopia, the review itself was a process that engaged multiple stakeholders, from government at all levels and different line industries to firms in different sectors and within sectors along the value chain. In particular, garment, textile, and pharmaceutical sectors. So it included also representatives from labor associations, NGOs, universities, research institutes, banks, and so on. So this is some of the stakeholders that you have to bring to the table in this process of process formulation, design, but also in the implementation part. So some of the main findings that we had on this study was that first, despite this rapid growth and increased foreign direct investment, progress in technological learning and innovation was limited. So innovation is what is really, at the end of the day, very important because it will bring new products and services to the market, create jobs, promoting structural transformation. So we have to focus on that. So the focus on the policy was on technology transfer, but that automatically does not result in technological learning. There was very little interest of the private sector in technological learning and innovation in general. So less than 1% of firms introduced new or better products, and only 1% have improved their technological process. So the private sector it's a key stakeholder, was not engaged in this process of science, technology, innovation. Second, there was a weak interaction among firms and between firms and research and development centers, and also between firms and support institutions and universities. That's also usually is a problem also in many other developing countries. And third, there was a mismatch between policy formulation and policy implementation. On paper, Ethiopia had most of the policies, regulations, background studies, and roadmaps needed to kickstart a successful process of technological upgrading. But in reality, as we have found in many other countries as well, there was a serious implementation gap. And there were many reasons for that. Apart from the capacity constraints and the eventual misallocation of efforts and resources, there was also a poor coordination in the implementation of the STI policy. And as we will see tomorrow in the seminar on policy instruments, many ministries and government agencies should be involved in the implementation of the STI policy. So it is a challenge to coordinate this work and engage the other actors outside of the government also as well, academia, research institutes, the private sector. It's key to ensure that we have resources, accountability, and also follow up in the implementation. So after the steep review, the government was working in the preparation of a new science, technology, innovation policy. And at that time, we made some recommendations to the government. And this was basically first to shift the focus from technology transfer to innovation and be based on direction from these national priorities and the SDGs. And second, these goods and services and the process to create these goods and services should actually contribute to the national development goals and SDGs. So the STI policy should not create an enabling environment for innovation only, but strategically, not only create an enabling environment, but strategically guide public and private instruments that build innovative capacities for sustainable development in the country. Also, the third point is that we have to have all actors of the national innovation system involved on that, not only, again, on the design of the STI policy, but also the implementation, monitoring, evaluation of the policy as well. So I'll stop here and I'll invite now Cornelia. Cornelia, you will, for the follow-up with the other country examples.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Clovis, and good afternoon to all. I will start my presentation. Yes, I will follow a presentation on the countries' examples, similarly to Clovis' presentation on Ethiopia. I will be giving some examples from countries in Africa, but also in Asia, just to illustrate in particular the participatory approaches that were used in different countries as part of the different STI policy processes in terms of development, but also reviews or implementation of these processes. My first example is the one of Ghana. Ghana has developed a STI roadmap for the SDGs, which was finalized this year, in April this year. And what is interesting to share with you in the case of Ghana is how Ghana has mobilized the different stakeholders to take part in this process of roadmap development. They created a task team on the SDGs and on the process that was led by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation and Environment, but also by the Presidency Unit for the SDGs. And this task team was essential to not only engage the various science line ministries, but also different stakeholders groups, including civil society and private sector. I will not describe the whole process, of course, but just to mention that Ghana has first started with the situational analysis to align better the STI to the SDGs. They have done also some priority setting and identified the key SDGs and targets that they would like to tackle with science, technology, and innovation. So it's a good example of how a participatory approach was used to conduct this process. An example also from Gambia, where in this past 2-3 years, the country has undertaken a number of initiatives to strengthen the science, technology, and innovation system in the country. And it is good to note that different committees and different interministerial working teams were composed to conduct these various processes, including assessing the STI system, working on designing new policy instruments. In Gambia, they've also conducted the technology needs assessment, and also some reforms in the legal system, in the legal framework concerning gender in science, technology, and innovation policies. So there was a good mobilization of different ministries, and this is what I wanted to highlight with this example, to see how the multi-stakeholder engagement was important in these processes. Next example is from Kenya. Kenya was also, as Ghana, working on the development of their STI for SDGs roadmap. And in the case of Kenya, one of the important stakeholders in the process was the African Center for Technology Studies, a think tank that was also participating in the process, assessing the various SDGs gaps, also aligning it to the new national STI policy, looking at the different gender aspects in the current version of the STI policy, and promoting multi-stakeholders participation in the roadmap development. A last example from Africa, I wanted to share the case of Mozambique with you. Mozambique has conducted also a mapping exercise of their STI system in order to identify some key areas for future STI investments, but also to provide some feedback and also evidence for the revision of their national science, technology, and innovation policy and strategy. In the case of Mozambique, the participation was ensured through different mechanisms, online surveys, but also work with the provinces in the countries. Recent regional consultations were conducted to mobilize not only the central government, but also the provinces as key stakeholders in the STI system and the different policy-making processes. I would like now to share very briefly a few examples also from Asian countries. An example from Bhutan, where recently the country has conducted an STI system mapping, a technology needs assessment as well, and where some techniques were also used to engage really broad range of stakeholders in the process. For instance, online surveys were designed to involve not only the supply side, but also demand side, and to consult a large number of companies on, especially on the technology needs assessment. This process has led to some policy recommendations, but the idea is really to highlight especially the participation of the different most stakeholders groups in this process. A case coming from Cambodia, where again the country has very recently conducted the mapping of exercise of their STI system to also look at the different SDGs perspective in terms of science, technology, and innovation. The country is currently working on reviewing the different laws and decrees that are also important in the science, technology, and innovation system. the policy mixes. And again, they have used online surveys to mobilize academia, but also private sector as part of this process of mapping the whole STI system. Different committees were also established that are chaired by the ministry in charge of industry, science, technology, innovation, but which include members and representatives from different other science-based ministries, which also reinforce the interministerial coordination and gives better chances further when comes the stage of implementation. My last example is from Uzbekistan, and it is also related to mapping the science, technology, innovation system, leading afterwards to the work for the development of the national science, technology, and innovation policy. And again, in the country, there was quite a good mobilization of the various stakeholders through, again, online surveys, consultations. There were a number also of technical missions in the different regions in the countries to assess also their potential, to assess especially the innovation potential in different regions of the country. And with this, I would like to thank you, and I stop my presentation. And we will be happy to discuss with you on these various examples. Thank you.
Thank you both Nelly and Clovis for also giving the time for presentation. And I think we have now moved to a bit of the theoretical aspects to more of the country experiences, and particularly trying to bring some close to your realities in Africa, but also some experiences from Asia, just like Cornelia has provided. And the idea here is, of course, to demonstrate some of these questions that even Guillermo had posted at the end of the presentation, are very real. So how do we actually translate some of the challenges that we face, connected to the SDGs to actual policy practice? So again, let me reiterate that we invite you to have some questions and comments, again, based on this presentation, but also if there is anything now that you feel, oh, now I need to discuss something in the presentation, please feel free. We have some time before we close, but we have a couple of questions, maybe just to give you some time to warm up. Segmei Despina, I think we have, and then we mentioned the Mentimeter question. So Segmei Despina, if you can please post the question for the link for the next question for the Mentimeter, so that we can start with the discussion. So the chat, you will have the question on your chat. And now this time, at the beginning, we had asked the kind of priorities for the government, right? And here now we would like to hear from you, to learn from you, what are the top 3 priorities of the STI policy for the country, your country, right? Please look for the link. It is posted in the chat. And then as you input the answer, so this should be something that you have already predefined categories. We'll see. Okay, so this is the first question is coming in. Please, I would like to see. You have already seen some of the discussion, and of course, after we see how your priorities distribute, we would like to have a conversation around those priorities, around those issues. But please look for the chat. Look for the link in the chat, and then let us know the priorities that your country has. In terms of SDGs, we had seen before the health was very prominent, but in terms of STI policy, maybe Clovis, you would also like to comment as you see the results.
Yes, thanks, Fernando. Yes, colleagues, we just wait a little bit for more results come, but you see, it's already showing the pattern that we usually see in many countries. The first item is strengthening scientific capacity. It's a priority in many of the STI policies. But you see that related to, more related to the innovation process, promote process of innovation to increase productivity, local technologies, these areas a little bit less. So there is a lot of more focus on the strengthening of the scientific capacity without that balance that I was mentioned to you related to STI. The other elements that are very important, as you are pointing out here, the building human capacity for science, technology, innovation. That is related to capacity in science, capacity in technology, capacity in innovation, but also it's important to build the capacity within the government as well, related to the science, technology, innovation policy and implementation. So that is also an important area. Now we are seeing some more coming related to increasing the process innovation to increase productivity. That is one area that, as you know, related to innovation, there are different innovations, but two of the main types, the process innovation and product innovation. In process innovation, you change process, you increase productivity, and we see that as one of the focus to increase productivity in the economy, but without a focus on the very important, the product innovation to create new sectors, new economic activities, and those are the economic diversification. So we need more, we should see more of the item E, promoted product innovation for economic diversification. That is not something that we see usually in the policies. It's also interesting to see that there is no harnessing frontier technologies. When Guillermo was presenting, he showed a graphic at the beginning of his presentation, was a graphic of 2 lines that was diverging, and there was this technological revolutions. If you may remember, you see there was an industrial revolution, and then the area of steam, and then mass production, and so on. And what that graph shows is that since the Industrial Revolution, every technological revolution has just increased these inequalities between developed countries and developing countries. So with every technological revolution, this inequality only increases. So it's important for countries to be preparing themselves for the next technological revolution, and also the current one, the digital transformation. And you see there is no priority in the policies. Usually that's what we see. No, it's not a focus, 0% here. So this really shows to us a picture that was usually found in many countries, and these priorities related to building scientific capacity, building human capacity, but not much focus on innovation, particularly product innovation, and also this consideration about how to position the country facing these technological revolutions. So thank you for this participation on that one. We have another question. Despina, or Zhengmei, can you add? Yes. So the next one is, what are the 2 key challenges for promoting STI for SDGs in our country? So if you can now enter, it's the same link. You can click again on the same link and then answer to this question.
I guess also while you are answering, sorry, just also would like to start reflecting, right? So we will have a bit of time to converse on this. So look at the numbers, look at the graphs, and then also think of what it means for maybe for you, some of these conclusions. Clovis. Sorry.
Yes, and actually, I already see one question here in the chat. It says, "Why is promotion of low technologies low? Is it related to indigenous knowledge systems?" Yes, you see, it is interesting to see that there is a lot of focus on technology transfer in many of our STI policies. but there is not much focus on endogenous technological learning.
Excuse me, please. Excuse me.
Sure.
Can you please assign the interpreter, the Portuguese interpreter, please?
Colleagues, can you assign the...
Yes, your colleagues on the technical side, if you can.
Sebastian, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine, Fernando. McNally will deal with it. We can continue. McNally will assign the interpreter. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, Clovis.
So I will be translating while he gets assigned.
These, the endogenous technological learning and increasing technological capacity as part of the policy. And also related to that is indigenous knowledge system is also related to that area as well. But in a sense, indigenous knowledge systems in many ways is also in some ways more linked to the science part and the scientific, let's say, the knowledge base that is indigenous knowledge base that complements a lot of the science. So you have citizen science and the indigenous knowledge system on that part as well. But what I was referring that is these local technological capacities that in many cases are not the focus of policy. So I can go again on that after look at this question. But if we see at this question now, here we have people already start to say, and we see one of the main challenges to align national development goals and SDGs. Yes, you see, that is what one of the key messages from this session here today is that your science, technology, innovation policy, it gives the direction of where you want to affect the innovation system of your country, and that has to be based on a goal that comes from your national policy and the SDGs. And that's a main challenge because many times the STI policies is simply not well connected, aligned to these development policies and the SDGs. And another challenge here that was highlighted is the design of effective STI policy instruments. Yeah, that's a very important one. The STI policy, it gives this direction. It says how you want to achieve the goals, but it doesn't go exactly in the details of how you do it in terms of the policy instruments, the tools. You have to create the tools. You have to create the subsidies, the grants. You have to have the programs. You have to have the research institutes established. You have to have all these other the policy instruments, these tools in place. And in many times, the policy is there, but the policy instruments are not aligned to the policy. Or in other times, the policy instruments, they exist, but they are not really implementing what the policy was supposed to do. So that is another important, and we'll be discussing tomorrow in our session. And another one that came here is monitoring and evaluation the STI policy as is another and implementation. So those will be also topics of our sessions during this week. So I think that very much shows that our sessions this week will be very relevant because they will cover this challenge. And now we would like to invite colleagues to jump in with their questions or put them in the chat. And back to you, Fernando and Cornelia, if you have any comments on that, on these questions as well, please.
Thank you, Clovis. Thank you. Well, I mean, again, we have some 10 minutes, around 12 minutes to have some more discussion. Yeah, I think this question on why the promotion of local technologies is low. I think many of you would have a comment on that, I guess, in terms of not only this idea of indigenous knowledge, but also in the way maybe some of your calls for projects are set up. And so you expect to find some kind of advanced technologies, but we see here that some of the innovations are incremental. And so this incrementality is sometimes not necessarily captured by, the research communities. And so you need to really connect the sort of incremental improvements for example, in companies, right? That is perhaps not challenging enough for a scientist. And so you really have to create these spaces, as Clovis was mentioning, the missing interaction between companies and research systems can also be explained, a way to explain these kind of low levels of technological development locally. I think in some of the sessions we will discuss our issues around demand, right? What is the demand? What are the demands triggering the technological development? So it's an important dimension. But anybody else would like to have a comment or a question, please? Not only addressing to the team here, but also in general, maybe somebody among the participants can have an answer in terms of sharing the experiences. Do you see any similarities with your own experiences?
Hi, Fernando.
Yeah, Annalyn,
yeah,
please.
It's Annalyn, yeah. No, thank you to Clovis and Cornelia for the presentation. One is just to find out if there's a specific tool that is used for these country assessments to develop the SDG roadmaps. Yes, there's the guideline that was shared, but does the guideline include a step-by-step process that needs to be followed when the roadmaps are developed? Secondly, on the alignment, can you adapt the tool to include, for example, alignment not only to SDG, which is global, but also to regional and continental instruments. So continental will be STISA, the Science Technology Strategy for Africa, and then regionally, which if we bring it at SADC level, it will be the SADC protocol on STI, but also the SADC Regional Indicative Strategic Development Framework. So that would be our policy instruments where we would want our member states not only to align to the SDGs, but also to align to the instruments that have been adopted continentally, but also those instruments that have been agreed upon regionally through the multilateral policy processes. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can answer to that, Fernando. And then Cornelia, if you want to add to that. So I think that precisely what we should also do, Annalyn, not only the national development priorities, but also these priorities, these agreed priorities of these regional groupings, and also the SDGs. The importance is to give this direction, and these are political directions. They are directions for the development of the country and the priorities that they want to give at the regional level and at the global level, and they should give the direction for the STI policy, and precisely what you are suggesting there.
Cornelia, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would like actually to respond to Annalyn's question about the tools and notably the guidebook that was developed for the STI for SDGs roadmaps. Indeed, the guidebook was developed to guide countries who undertake this process to develop their roadmaps. It gives a step-by-step approach in different phases, starting from some diagnostic, situational analysis, and then really going into the actual priorities and developing the pathways and the roadmap itself. So it's a framework that was piloted these past 2 years. We had worked with 5 pilot countries. Now a 6th one has joined. And as a UN-IATT, we have accompanied these pilot countries to use and apply the guidebook for developing their STI roadmaps. And in terms of specifically the assessment part, the mapping, I think in the different agencies, we have different methodologies, different tools that we are using. UNCTAD has the STIP reviews methodology and framework. At UNESCO, we are using the Global Observatory on Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Instruments approach. And there are many others which are very complementary, but also providing different perspectives, different also elements. And this is why also the interagency task team is good in the sense that we are using all the materials that are available in the different agencies we represent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think, thank you, Cornelia. Thank you, Clovis. I think it's important, and I think Guillermo included this area of science diplomacy, and particularly, I mean, Africa. Some of the recent reports is normally a region that you know, scarce resources and in terms of production relative to other regions, even developing regions, tends to perform at lower levels. I think it makes sense what you're suggesting, Amelie, in terms of collaboration, cross-regional collaboration is important to leverage on assets, right? So many times, particularly neighbor countries have similar challenges, right? But the idea of policy being constrained at the national level, that means that we don't have these opportunities to share experiences or to share perhaps joint projects, right? To leverage on the resources from both sides of the border, if you want. So I think it's important what you're saying here, that the frameworks are there to be made, you know, actionable. So I think it's an important dimension, and STI, collaboration in STI is very important. As you said, to align national efforts to regional and global priorities, and of course, the challenge that America is such that, you know, we better work together in this. Any other question? Any other comment? I think it's important. Some of the issues here in terms of directionality and trade-offs and regional perspectives can be important to consider. So, Dr. Niang, please, if you can unmute yourself and share with us your comment or question.
Bonjour.
Merci.
Hello. Hello. I am Damien. I'm working in a scientific agency in Senegal. I want to intervene on scientific council on the policy that is based, that evidence-based policy. In Senegal, we have a group that is working on decisions on scientific evidences that the politicians can use. In July, we had a forum, African forum on promotion and best practice sharing at the level of the government. In that forum, that forum was organized by the National Academy of Science and Technology. And we worked with renowned scientists who work with politicians. They are helping the government to catch the science. But sometimes the government is asking the academy to provide the counsel for us. Because we had flood, plenty of an abundance of floods, too much because of too much rain in Senegal. So we had, as scientists, we had to design a technical note, and then from there we had a 10-year plan that was conceived in Senegal. This is one of the experiences that we had in Senegal in terms of scientific notice that scientists are provided to the government. I also want to ask, so we also want to ask if we also have other countries who are doing the same. Thank you.
Can I ask you to address this question quickly? Yeah, I know it's going to be difficult, but please.
I'll respond in English, but hopefully the translation will be good. It really depends on the will of the government, la volonté du gouvernement, to take on the scientific advice. And this can be worked on by the scientists by making their advice more understandable to policymakers, but there still has to be a willing and welcoming audience for this advice. And I commend Senegal in setting up these different forums to be able to bring forward the advice and have the policymakers take them on. I think it really is a learning process that policymakers need to be involved in with scientists so that they learn how each other speaks and what the methodology or the approaches to gathering the science for this decision-making process. So it really has to be a collaborative effort, and there has to be a willingness to accept the advice.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you. I think, yes, just to, if I may supplement, I think it's important what we're talking about here is about evidence-based policy, right? And to what extent we can validate policy. But as Pierre said, is willingness, but as Clovis mentioned also, is capacity, right? Some of the scientific facts coming up from research are complex, and you know, policymakers cannot be asked to know everything from advance. So it really makes a challenge in terms of where we saw the science policy interface and how to communicate. So this is a very important question in terms of demystifying the evidence, right? The evidence can be read in many different ways, and we certainly have to be able to judge critically. Dimo, just a final word before we close, and we also have also a few questions for you just to help us improve the webinars interaction and messages. But Dimo, some of the comments you might have. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Just a quick comment. I appreciate you mentioned this this idea, that there are some give and take, and sometimes you have divergent strategies over the same thing. I would notice the question of indigenous technologies, and I think one of the reasons why we don't see many of them is because the strategy for indigenous technologies is not very clear. The problem is that for any kind of indigenous technology to develop, policymakers need to be clear what they want to do with it. And the problem here is that the strategy of commercialization and the strategy of preservation in terms of heritage and particularly cultural heritage, if we're talking about that, they are very different things, and they use very different policy tools. So when we talk about indigenous knowledge and so forth, the problem is that we need to define clearly what it is that we want to do. And the commercialization and the preservation goals are two different things with very different policy instruments. So once that is clear, then there may be some more clarity in what follows. Fernando, do you want me to talk about what will happen on Wednesday on my part, or should we save this for a couple of minutes later?
No, I think you can.
Okay.
Because it's an important activity for Wednesday. So
right. So on Wednesday, we will be doing a session on entrepreneurship and what's it all about in terms of innovation and science and technology. And for that, I will be doing one of the elements in that session. I have prepared an exercise. You will see in the chat there's a link to a quiz. And there's also, I have uploaded a PDF of the actual case studies. I would ask you to please be so kind, download the PDF, read the case studies, and please then go to the questionnaire and answer the questions. It's not a very long text. It should take you less than 10 minutes to read the entire text, and it is the forms. The questionnaire should take according to Microsoft, at least less than 8 minutes to actually perform the actual quiz. So there we have the links. I will have a version of the actual PDF in French ready in a few minutes. Okay, so I will upload that as well for the French speaking. Unfortunately, the quiz is only in English for the time being. So thank you very much, and see you all on Wednesday.
Thank you, Dimo. Wednesday is the session on entrepreneurship and innovation. So please, we have a request. Can you please turn on your cameras, all of the participants? We would like to make a family photo. And while you turn your cameras on, I would also invite you to answer some of the questions that we have prepared for this closure of the session. Maybe Segmei Espina, can you display the links while our colleagues are putting their cameras on, so that by the time we are done, we can get back to those questions. Please, I see many of you still hiding behind your dark cameras. So please, it's good always to have a family photo, and this is a big family, so please let's have a quick photo, and you let me know, Cornelia, when we are done and we can continue. But those of you who already turned your cameras, also, if you want to go to your chat and click on the question, there are 2 questions. Basically, to know what the key messages that you take from the session, what you think about the session, and those we use for informing our own work and hopefully improving our work, which is always a good thing, because you are the best thermometer that we have for such an endeavor, right? So just signal when we are ready with the photo, and then we can continue. I would just ask participants to stay for a couple more minutes to please answer the questions. There are 2 links, right? So the question 1 is in 2 words to describe what you consider are the key aspects of STI policies for SDGs. And then the second question is, what would be your recommendation for us to improve in next session, right? So in two words, what you think is the key aspects of STI policies for SDGs, and then some comments for us in terms of improving the sessions. And I thank you very much for turning on your camera. Some of you prefer to have the photo already online. It's okay, but it's just to the extent possible for you, please. Okay. Okay. You let me know if there's any other thing, Nelly. But I think just to summarize the session today, first of all, let me again thank very much SADC, Annelien in particular for this invitation, for the IIT team to contribute to this ambitious program. We know it's been running for a while, and the online format is not necessarily as good as we might be used to in terms of in-person interactions, but it's an effort that we try to deliver and engage with you even despite the difficulties for the pandemic. So again, Annelien and SADC, thank you very much for the opportunity to interact with all of you. For us, in terms of the takeaways from this session, we would like to stress the idea that science, technology, innovation is a systemic or are systemic activities. Although we tend to cluster recently on STI, they have their own dynamics, their own dimensions, their own communities, and therefore they require policies that are attuned for their needs, right? And there are linkages in terms of interactions, exchanges, and flows. The challenges of SDGs are such that participatory processes, and recognizing that many different agents can contribute to achieving the goals. It's important, but it has to be in an organized way. And so facilitating policy processes that engage as many as possible actors is important. Evidence-based policy is one of the things that we aim foster in our countries, but being aware that there are limitations, there are ups and do's and don'ts, right? So we have to be very, very careful and understand the biases, right? National environmental conditions and framework conditions are important because they provide contextual factors, provide frameworks, provide opportunities, assets, so therefore requiring proactivity, directionality, governance. As we have been stressed, indigenous knowledge, local capacities are important also in the tune of the SDGs. And also the SDGs bring dimensions in terms of people are important, balancing between economic, environmental, and sustainability, inclusiveness goals, right? So people have to be at the center of the efforts, but also policy making in itself is a learning process. Activities such as monitoring and evaluation become very important to guide us, to give us some lessons and hopefully basis for improvement. I don't know if any other of my colleagues has any other comment. If not, then I would just give this session a closure. I would invite you kindly to join us tomorrow, same time, using the same link. Wednesday, as Dimos mentioned, we have an exercise that is important that you take your time to go over because it's going to be part of the one segment of the session. Without your help, that session is not possible. So please, a kind request to take your time to make the exercise. It's fun. It's just a question. It's just to ask you, what is an entrepreneur? How do we actually go about identifying entrepreneurs and supporting them? So hopefully you also enjoy while answering. Nelly, any comment?
Yes, thank you, Fernando. I think we are good, and thank you for also announcing the session tomorrow, which will be on the topic of science, technology, and innovation policy instruments designed for the SDGs. And as you said, Fernando, we will meet at the same time tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central African time.
And of course, we expect you to come with a lot of questions, with a lot of experiences to share. As you see, these sessions are meant to be interactive, and the interactivity comes also from you. So thank you much in advance. Have a nice continuation of your afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. We'll also, on our side, Fernando, McNally will send an email to all the participants who have registered, because we do have automatically captured those who have registered, and we'll share on the email the link and also the PDF that was shared by Dimo. I think we'll just send an email out to that, because there are some comments said to say the PDF is not downloadable. But I think we'll send it by email together with the link. So McNally will do that immediately after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you and see you tomorrow.
Yeah, so colleagues, see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock, same time, using the same link. We had about 68 participants, so we expect the same number of participants tomorrow. 3 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye. Bye. See you tomorrow. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.